He shouldn't have gone below the church. Horror story. The basement below the choir. Part 1. The basement below the choir. They told me the church was condemned. Its crumbling arches and mildewed pews, nothing more than a relic of a forgotten town. Yet there I stood, flashlight in hand, as my boots clicked softly against the cracked tiles of the nave. The smell was what hit me first. Mold, dust, and something faintly sweet like rotting flowers. The air was still, unnaturally so, like the whole building was holding its breath. Father Halbert, the current keeper of the grounds, handed me a set of iron keys earlier that afternoon. His hand trembled as he passed them to me, the metal clinking in an odd rhythm like teeth chattering in fear. "Do your thesis work, if you must," he had muttered, eyes avoiding mine. "But don't go beyond the choir pit, and if you see a book with a black spine, leave it be." He didn't wait for me to ask questions, just turned and shuffled away down the gravel path like he couldn't get away fast enough. Of course, I didn't listen. The choir pit was nothing but an empty hole now, overgrown with vines that had forced their way through stained glass decades ago. Below it, hidden behind what used to be a wooden panel, was a rusted, spiral staircase. It groaned under my weight with every step down, the sound echoing like a voice, whispering through the dark stone walls. The basement smelled worse. Damp parchment and mold clung to every surface. There were shelves upon shelves of old hymnals, rotting velvet choir robes, candle stubs melted into the floor. My flashlight flickered, once, then again, before stabilizing, casting elongated shadows that danced along the uneven brick. And there it was. The last shelf, half swallowed by darkness, was more shrine than storage. Dust floated in beams of sickly yellow light that pierced through a vent above, illuminating a single book. Black leather, cracked and flaking, with no title on its spine. It sat at the center like it had been waiting. I don't know why I reached for it. Curiosity, maybe. The leather felt warm, too warm, and the moment my fingers touched the cover, the basement seemed to shift. A low hum vibrated through the walls, as if something beneath the church had stirred. When I opened the book, names filled every page, handwritten in dark ink, some old, some newer, all in different scripts. No dates, no explanations. Then I turned to a page near the end. One name stood out, Eleanor M. Lorne, and for a moment, I felt something tighten in my chest. My grandmother's name was Eleanor, but she died long before I was born. I'd only ever seen her name in letters, her death certificate, and a single photo on my father's mantle. What the hell was her name doing in this book? My lips parted before I could stop them. Elias. Thud. Something slammed above me. Hard. The sound echoed like a falling piano in a silent cathedral. I froze, heart hammering, every muscle in my body tensing. My breath caught in my throat. I turned the flashlight toward the spiral stairs. Nothing. Then a second thud. Closer, this time behind me. The beam jerked with my hand as I spun around, breathing ragged, the sound of my own exhale now loud in my ears. The shadows danced like they were alive. My light caught movement. Or maybe it was just dust, but I was certain. I wasn't alone anymore. The pages of the book flipped slightly, as if something had breathed across them. Part 2. Names that shouldn't be remembered. The book snapped shut on its own. A soft click, like fingernails tapping on wood, echoed through the basement. I staggered backward, flashlight swaying wildly across the stone walls as my breath became shallow, ragged. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to get out now. I bolted toward the spiral staircase, but when I reached it, my boots skidded to a halt. The metal steps that had brought me down were gone. No, not gone. Collapsed. Twisted iron bones curled downward like melted wax, vanishing into a pit of shadow. My light couldn't touch the bottom. Cold air rose from below, carrying the coppery scent of blood and something older, sour and bitter, like regret left to rot. I turned around, heart pounding in my throat. There had to be another way out. I moved quickly, weaving between rotting choir robes and splintered furniture. But the basement had changed. The shelves were no longer familiar. The candle stubs had multiplied. A dusty, cracked mirror now leaned against the far wall. I was sure it hadn't been there before. In the reflection, I paused. My face looked older. My hair was slightly grayer at the temples. My shirt, which had been light gray, looked dingy, worn, like it had been washed too many times. The flashlight in my hand flickered in the mirror, but not in reality. Something was wrong. I stepped back, and the mirror let out a soft creak. A breath fogged the surface from the other side. I hadn't exhaled. I spun, shining my light behind me. Nothing. Just the still, oppressive dark. "Okay, think," I whispered. "There was a vent above the book. Maybe I can climb out through." Then I saw it. A sigil, carved into the wall behind the bookcase, half hidden by fallen hymnals and dust. The shape was jagged, symmetrical, but wrong somehow, like a cross with too many arms, looping in on itself like a knot. Old blood stained the grooves. Beneath it, in the crumbling stone, was a faint inscription. "The choir of silence sings once more." My blood ran cold. My flashlight trembled in my grip. The book was open again. This time, the ink was still wet. A new name had appeared. Lucas Wren. I dropped the flashlight. My name. The light clattered across the floor, casting frantic shadows that danced like clawed fingers. I backed away from the book, heartbeat thunderous in my ears. Footsteps, light, bare, scurried above me, directly overhead. They circled, then stopped, and then singing. Soft, dissonant, like voices not meant for human harmony, layered over each other in impossible octaves. It wasn't a hymn I recognized. It didn't feel holy. It felt like the mockery of prayer, something ancient pretending to be sacred. I grabbed the flashlight and ran to the far wall, desperate for another exit. That's when I saw them. Photographs, dozens of them, pinned to the stones with rusted nails. Black and white images, water-damaged and curling at the edges. All of them of children, standing in front of the very same church. Some smiling, some not. At the bottom of one photo, in faded ink, Eleanor, the first to hear the song. Another showed a group gathered around a pit, the very one above me, wearing choir robes, hands joined, eyes closed. A ritual. A voice, not mine, whispered from somewhere behind the wall. "The song never ends. Only you stopped listening." I turned in a panic, but the room was empty. Or was it? The candle stubs were lit now, one by one, casting a sickly glow. Shadows writhed, and I realized they were moving with purpose, leaning toward me. The sigil began to bleed. The book whispered, pages rustling without wind. I pressed my hands to the wall, looking for hidden seams, secret doors. My fingertips burned when they brushed the stone near the sigil. The wall breathed, in and out, slow and steady, like a sleeping beast just starting to stir. A thud came from the far corner, then another, then scratching from inside the walls. Something was crawling. No, something was coming home. I turned back to the mirror. My reflection was gone, and in its place stood a little girl in a tattered choir robe, smiling. Her lips moved, though no sound came, but I heard her anyway. You heard the song too, didn't you? Part 3. The choir remembers. She didn't blink. The girl in the mirror, Eleanor, stood silently, her smile as still and unnatural as wax. Her eyes glistened, as if they held more than reflection, as if behind that thin pane of glass, she watched me from a place just out of reach, from a time not entirely past. My breath fogged the mirror. Her breath didn't. My name echoed in my skull. Lucas Wren. The fresh ink in the book. The voice behind the wall. The photographs. The name Eleanor. My grandmother's name. My mother never talked much about her family. Just that her mother had died in an accident tied to the church. But what if it wasn't an accident? What are you? I whispered. What do you want from me? Eleanor's mouth moved again, forming words without sound. But this time, the answer didn't come from the glass. It came from the walls. You were born from the song. My vision blurred. The candlelight dimmed and flared as the air thickened, like a choir's breath before the first note. Behind me, the book fluttered its pages violently, torn by an unseen force. When it stopped, a page lay open with a sketch, an old ink drawing, a ritual. Children in robes stood in a circle, holding hands. In the center, a young girl with long black hair, arms raised toward a shape that loomed from above, a dark, many-limbed thing with a mouth full of keys. Below the image, handwritten words bled into the page. To remember the silence, we offer the voice reborn. I stumbled back. The sigil on the wall pulsed now, faintly glowing like embers. My fingers itched. Something in my skin felt wrong, like a heat beneath the surface. I rolled up my sleeve. A mark. Faint, circular, the same as the sigil carved in the wall. It had been beneath my skin all along. No, not a mark. A brand. I'm not part of this, I breathed. I just came here to find answers. The mirror shimmered. Eleanor stepped forward, inside the reflection, but it was as if the surface no longer separated us. Her voice came soft, cold as candle wax. But the answers are you, Lucas. The walls around me shifted. What had been solid brick now looked like old wood paneling. The church basement began to reshape itself. I turned and found myself back in the original choir room, but it was younger, whole, clean, polished floors, stained glass windows unshattered. Candlelight glowed from golden chandeliers above. The smell of old incense and beeswax lingered. Voices murmured. I wasn't alone. Shadows moved along the pews. Children in choir robes sat in neat rows, heads down. A priest stood at the altar, arms raised in solemn command. His face was indistinct, like smudged charcoal, but his voice rang with horrible clarity. To sing the song is to remember. Eleanor sat in the front row, hands folded. She turned and looked directly at me, and for a terrifying second, everyone else did too. Their eyes were hollow. I screamed. The vision shattered like glass around me, and I fell to my knees in the cold, damp present. The dust returned, the mildew, the broken shelves, the candlelight guttered as if gasping for air. But the message had been delivered. I wasn't just inside the story. I was part of the ritual. Something had been started the moment I read Eleanor's name. Or maybe the moment I was born. I crawled to the book, shaking. It had closed again, but this time, something was tucked beneath it. A letter, old, yellowed, and brittle. It was addressed not to me, but to my mother. He will find the song, as you once did, but he must choose. Silence the choir forever, or let it sing through him. My heart pounded like a drum. There were no more exits. The mirror behind me shimmered again. Eleanor still stood there, now holding out her hand. Another voice joined hers, layered, ancient. The door opens with your voice, Lucas. Sing, or silence it forever. A decision. Escape? Destroy the book? Join the ritual? The shadows waited for my choice. The sigil pulsed. The song built in my head like pressure behind the eyes. And through the panic, something deep stirred. A memory not mine, but remembered all the same. A promise made in blood. A voice offered willingly. A name forgotten until now. Mine. Part 4. The choir must feed. The candle's flame flickered once, then held steady, unnaturally so, like it was waiting for my breath to disturb it. In the mirror, Eleanor still held out her hand. Her lips no longer moved, but her eyes sang. I couldn't hear the melody, not yet, but I felt it. A hum beneath my skin, a pressure behind my teeth, like something long buried was clawing its way toward the surface. The letter trembled in my hand. Sing or silence it forever. I looked down at the book again. Black leather, gold-trimmed edges, pages that turned by themselves, as if the words inside weren't written, but alive. It pulsed faintly beneath my fingertips, like a heartbeat. My heartbeat. No, I said aloud. I'm not a vessel. I'm not your voice. But the chamber around me shifted again, subtly. The shelves warped. The floor beneath me grew softer, sticky with something dark seeping through the cracks. Blood, ink, or something worse. The walls moaned with memory. From the corners of the room, whispers poured in. Not English, not Latin, but something older, choral, ancient. Voices layered upon voices, some weeping, some chanting, some laughing. My ears rang. I stood, and the song inside me rose. My mouth opened against my will, and I heard the first syllable spill out. No. I slammed the book shut. The whispers stopped. For a moment, everything froze. Time, breath, the candlelight suspended mid-flicker. And then, the room screamed. The mirror shattered from the inside out. Eleanor vanished, her figure disintegrating into 1,000 shards. The sigil on the wall cracked. glowing white-hot before dimming into black. The book fought in my hands, pages snapping open violently like wings. Symbols earned into the paper. Smoke rose. I threw it to the ground. I said no! I grabbed the candle and drove it into the book's spine. Flame met flesh, because that's what it felt like. The book shrieked, not in sound, but in pressure. The air squeezed my ribs, made my teeth grind. The fire caught slowly, reluctantly, like the book was trying to reject being destroyed. As it burned, the walls peeled back to reveal them. The choir. Dozens of ghostly children, their mouths open but soundless, watching me with black, endless eyes. Their robes tattered, marked with the same sigil that burned beneath my skin. And behind them, a figure stepped forward. Tall, thin, veiled in shadows that twisted like smoke. It wasn't Eleanor. It was what she was meant to become, the final voice, the conductor of the choir of silence. Its face was a blur, flickering between features, sometimes mine, sometimes not. It extended a long, skeletal arm toward me. A key hung from its fingers, ancient, iron, etched with bone-white runes. "You have broken the chorus," it hissed, voice echoing from inside my chest. But the silence remembers. As the book's ashes curled upward, the entity stepped back. The children behind it wept silent tears of blood, then slowly turned to mist. The candle guttered, and just like that, the chamber was empty. The walls returned to stone. The sigil faded, the mirror gone. The air smelled of soot and iron. I stood alone, with only a charred mark on the floor where the book had burned, and the faint echo of something unspoken drifting through the stillness. But something inside me had changed. I touched my chest. The mark beneath my skin no longer pulsed. Instead, a low, constant hum vibrated in my bones. Not music, not words, memory. Fragments pieced together, not mine, but inherited. I saw Eleanor as a child, alone, chosen, trained to become the song's vessel, but she resisted. She died during the final ritual. But her soul didn't pass on. It remained trapped, fractured across reflections, waiting for me. Why? Because she was my blood, my grandmother's twin sister, hidden, forgotten, erased from the family line to bury the shame of the failed choir. And I was the backup plan, the last viable heir, the only one left who could sing the old song, because I was born with the mark.